what about Attorney General Loretta Lynch? Okay, so yesterday she testifies before the House Judiciary Committee. She didn't offer any new details. We watched it. She sparked criticism about her lack of transparency, and it prompted an attack from Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte. Listen to this. I'd like to get your reaction.
As Attorney General, it would be inappropriate for me to comment further on the underlying facts of the investigation or the legal basis for the team's recommendation.
The concern here is regard to your sworn oath to uphold the United States Constitution and the laws thereunder, and to conclude that no prosecution would take place without examining and drawing conclusions regarding the questions that I've just asked does not seem to be a responsible way to uphold your constitutionally sworn oath.
Robert, this is the most extraordinary thing. I mean, she has the private meeting with Bill Clinton. She comes out after that because the public was just outraged by it. And she says, I'm going to accept the recommendation of the FBI. I mean, does this look like everybody's in bed?
Well, it's a terrible situation that she put herself in. It's an impossible situation to respond to. How's she supposed to answer the question, well, what went into your decision-making with regard to the decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton? And the truthful answer to that is there's nothing she can say about it, because she can't have involved herself in the process, because she's already created the appearance of impropriety by meeting with the former president. So there is no answer to that question. That's why Congress probed. But what's she supposed to say? I mean, generally speaking, the idea the prosecutor speaks in court, but she's the chief law enforcement officer of the country. With regard to a potential prosecution of a presidential candidate, she should have something to say, but because of her actions, she put herself in an impossible position, and because of that appearance of impropriety, she was essentially rendered hapless.
Should she have recused herself from the whole thing after meeting with Bill Clinton privately? I mean, and by the way, there's so much to say about that. There were no aides in the room taking notes. That's also unheard of for a position as high as Attorney General. Where are your staffers taking notes?
Well, also, she's on the short list to be Attorney General under a Clinton administration, should that happen, right?
Oh, that's another thing. Hillary said it right before this all took place. Oh, she's going to stay in.
There isn't a good resolution of that whole thing. I mean, generally speaking, what you would have expected to happen if there was, in fact, an appearance of impropriety, a recusal, the Attorney General then delegates who the person is next in line to make that decision, none of which, of course, happened. And it forced, frankly, the FBI director to step into a role that typically you would not expect an FBI director to step into. And Jim Comey was only able to do it because he's formerly been the Deputy Attorney General and a U.S. Attorney, so it's sort of natural fit for him to speak more as a prosecutor than as an FBI director. So, frankly, out of the whole thing, nobody ended up looking good, and yet again, the Clintons put people in terrible positions, out of role, making everybody look bad, and no matter what Hillary Clinton seems to touch, everybody seems to come away scathed.
Look, you were the independent counsel. You investigated and issued reports on Whitewater, that scandal, and the White House travel office controversy. So your opinion matters here. In the Travelgate report, you found that Hillary Clinton was, quote, factually false in her sworn testimony about her role in the firing of 7 members of the White House travel staff. That was in the early 90s. However, you could not conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that her statements were knowingly false.
Sound familiar?
Exactly. And that's why you did not pursue criminal charges against her. Is history repeating itself?
How many times do we have to go through this before people finally wake up? And is the only thing that people will pay attention to the fact that someone gets indicted before you actually step aside and say, hey, wait a second, maybe this person shouldn't be president of the United States?
Right, indictment or not, what we do know about the case and what she did, still a problem, even if it was just incompetence. I really don't want an incompetent president. I don't know if that's a radical stance to take.
Let's take a step back here and remind ourselves that she's a lawyer who went after Richard Nixon.
She knew.
She was First Lady. She was Secretary of State. And now we're seeing in emails, she actually had a parentheses, C, close parentheses, marking confidential. Possibly, we don't know, because we don't know what she told the FBI and whether she lied under oath to them.
Robert, on top of Hillary Clinton, if she was elected president of the United States, you've got Bill Clinton. You saw what he did with Loretta Lynch. You've got former president running around the White House with a lot of time on his hands. What does that look like? And I'm not joking, actually. in terms of his potential influence and power in a White House where he doesn't have a designated job? What does that look like?
Well, you know, look, that drifts more into the personal. I mean,
no, I'm not even again, it's causing problems.
I think, though, that people have to ask themselves the very basic question about whether or not the country wants to return to this and go through all of this again. And if you want a situation in which you're looking toward a new administration with endless investigations and subpoenas and lawyers and, you know, issues about cover-ups and, you know, skirting the edge of legal propriety, you know, that's essentially what you're voting for again, because there's no reason to think, based upon the most recent experience, that this isn't going to continue, because it's continued now for over 20 years.
You know, we had Darrell Issa on last week, and he basically said, look, the American people will decide come November 8th. Do you think this resonates with the people, or do you think this is going to just...
Ultimately, I trust the good and fair judgment of the American people. I think the poll numbers seem to suggest that what happened over the past week has had an impact. I do think people are paying attention. I mean, it's troubling to me when I hear people say, well, yes, I understand that Hillary Clinton acknowledged that she's not telling the truth, but I'm going to vote for her anyway.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can do that. It's your right to do that. But, you know, be careful what you ask for, and you may very well get it. And, you know, my concern is it's not in the country's best interest, in my opinion, humble opinion, to return to an era where we're sort of in an endless, you know, investigation, whether by members of congressional committees, prosecutors, the Justice Department, so on. It compromises everyone, and it's not good for the country.
We also should point out she's telling us exactly what she's going to do, right? She's going to build on Obamacare. She's going to build on Dodd-Frank. She's going to raise taxes.
She's going to go after, right? She's going to go after the Second Amendment. She wants to remove the liability waiver for gun manufacturers. She wants to expand Medicare. She wants to even take it further than President Obama did.
The most important thing is high standards in government. I mean, for whatever his faults may be, President Obama has not had, really, frankly, the hint of scandal during his administration. One of the reasons he was elected was because people made a choice between him and her. Now the question is, you've got her. Is that really what you want?
Even more scandals since then, and there's no reason to believe it wouldn't continue, because she doesn't face consequences, so why would she think she'd be held accountable in the future?
And it's far more difficult to hold, trust me, I know, to hold a president accountable than it is anybody else.
All right. Robert, great insights. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Robert Ray, good to see you again.